What's going up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Cloud Pilot podcast. And in this video, we have an amazing person with us today to talk about machine learning engineering. He is a machine learning engineer at Amazon US. Let's welcome Tomas Ye to the Cloud Pilot podcast. Tommy is a good friend of mine. We met in mid 2020s when he was in Amazon Luxembourg. Ever since, we have been having so much good conversations regarding software engineering, which he was then, and now he's an ML engineer, and he's going to share you with some knowledge about how to start a career in machine learning engineering. So welcome, Tommy. Happy to have you here, and thank you so much for accepting my invite.
Hey, Udesh. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here as always.
Can you tell us about your journey, how you got into Amazon and how you finally ended up, you were a software engineer initially, and then, you became a machine learning engineer, and now you're in the US. And basically you're from Czech, and then you moved into Luxembourg and now in the US. So how did the whole journey transition? How was the transition, and, how was the journey so far?
So my name is Thomas, and I was born and raised in Czech Republic, a tiny country in Europe, to an American father and a Czech mother. I studied mathematics at university. Throughout university, I kind of realized mathematics is cool and programming is even cooler because it's like applied math to real world problems. You can actually get, when you're solving mathematical theorems, it's fun, but writing programs, you're actually doing something in the real world. Whereas in the mathematical theorem, you're just writing it on a whiteboard, trying to impress other mathematicians, right? So very quickly, I realized that software engineering, or just like writing code, writing software, doing technology is more applicable for me, and that I derive more satisfaction from it. So then despite majoring from mathematics, I did a lot of software engineering and technology side projects and extracurricular activities. You can think of like hackathons and coding competitions, and this naturally led me to a couple of part-time jobs that I had as back in Prague in Czech Republic around 2017, 2018. And then in 2019, after I graduated from university, I got an offer from Amazon in Luxembourg to start as a software engineering intern. I happily accepted the offer. I worked there for around 3 months, and then the guy was like, "Hey, Thomas, what are you up to after the internship?" And I was like, I don't know. I might go back to school, to get the master degree. And they were like, "Hey, why don't you stay with us? Here's a return offer." And I was like, I don't feel like going back being a poor student. So I accepted the offer and was there. And I've been at Amazon ever since, and don't regret it. Like, Amazon is a pretty cool place, especially for a recent graduate who doesn't know anything about how the real world works. Working at a place like Amazon, I think, can really put your career on the right trajectory. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got inside Amazon as an intern, who, as a recent graduate who had a lot of math and technology on his background, on his CV. So I got the internship, which was pretty straightforward, like a 1 tech interview and 3 behavioral interviews. Then I got the internship, and then all I had to do is impress my boss during my internship. So I made sure to work during that internship, and then I got the full-time offer. And ever since then, I was, making sure I ace my project, and that's what I did.
So, I mean, it's indeed an amazing journey, because it's not really that easy to get into Amazon. If you take in India, it's a huge competition. It's a big market.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's truly very hard to get into top tech companies like Amazon. So
I actually think I was a little bit lucky, I have to say, and it's kind of what they actually say to candidates trying to get into big tech companies, is that the place matters. There are places that are less competitive than others. And so what I didn't know at the time, but I've learned later, is that Luxembourg was one of the less competitive places
Oh.
because it's not really, if you're looking at it from like a point of view of Europe, Luxembourg is not a sexy place to be. If you're a software engineer with a sexy profile and you can choose to go to London or Zurich or Munich and Luxembourg, you will probably not choose Luxembourg. I didn't really have that great of a profile, and I got rejected from Google and Facebook and Microsoft from all over Europe. But Amazon gave me an offer to move from Luxembourg because Amazon was having a hard time hiring people in Luxembourg. So I guess if for people that are listening to this and trying to like get some tangible advice from it, is like when you're trying to get into a big tech company, that just the tech company itself is not the only factor. Like the place that you're applying to matters as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that most people doesn't really know. So
Yeah,
this is
it's
an
a hidden
important.
trick. It's a hidden trick. Yeah.
Yep, this is an important piece of advice. Cool. So now you were a software engineer then, and now you're a machine learning engineer. So how is your daily job? How is the work culture at Amazon? And what does a machine learning engineer do on a daily basis?
All right, I'm super happy you asked me this question. It's a very good question, and it's a tricky question. So I started off as a software engineer, right? As a software engineer at Amazon, what I did in Luxembourg was build a bunch of big data processing software. You're big into cloud, so you'll probably understand when you have a lot of data about something, tables that have billions and billions of rows, writing software that processes all this data is non-trivial. You need some sort of a cloud service that does that. AWS, Amazon Web Services, has such services like S3, Redshift. So during my like software engineering days, I spent a lot of time working with these services, trying to take data from several sources, massage it, give it to other teams, to use it. So that's what I did. And then I always wanted to be a machine learning engineer because like I'm a mathematician. I studied mathematics. I love mathematics.
Absolutely.
I love the way mathematics stimulates my brain. Machine learning just sounds so sexy, because it's kind of like math and computer science together, right? And it solves real world problems. I mean, it seems like the best thing in the world.
Yep.
And it kind of is. So I found that at Amazon there are roles that are doing like heavy machine learning, and I wanted to become one such person doing that thing. At some point I realized that in the team that I was in Luxembourg, I'm not gonna get exposure to that kind of work because that's just not what the team was doing. So then I had to look around. I found a team in the US that the guy was like, hey, Thomas, you already have the American passport, you wanna go to Seattle. So I was like, so it worked out. Suddenly I'm in this team in Seattle with a machine learning engineer title, and I find myself doing very similar things that I was doing back in Luxembourg as a regular software engineer, right? Like again, like taking a lot of data, forwarding it to some scientist who then pushes it into his model or whatever. How is that possible? Right? Like, am I not, as a machine learning engineer, am I not supposed to be like doing something super sexy, And it took me a while to understand this. And it basically boils down to that, yes, like machine learning is very sexy. And I am working on systems that do machine learning right now. And before I was working on non-machine learning systems. Now I am working on machine learning systems, but I am doing the same work that I was pretty much doing back then anyways, right? And the reason for it is that when you have machine learning like systems, there is that core machine learning algorithm that translates one thing from one language to another, or maybe you have a ranker. That's what I'm working on right now. You have some sort of like a search engine ranker of results, machine learning powered. Yes, there is a machine learning core, and that core consists of those sexy algorithms we learn about in school, And that's the meat of it. However, there's a lot of technological infrastructure around that core algorithm that takes so much effort to build as well. You can think, but that work, just building that infrastructure around that, is not necessarily that sexy. It's regular software engineering. It's for like a machine learning system, but it's regular software engineering. And when you actually look at it, to build a machine learning powered intelligent system, you maybe spend 10% of the time on writing the algorithm, and then you spend 90% of the time preparing the data, implementing the data pipelines of the training data, then the validation data, then you somehow need to orchestrate when this data comes here, run this model, validate it on this, and all this takes, at least 90% of the whole development time. So to answer the question, like, what's the duty of the MLE? It's basically to make sure those 90% of tasks supporting the model, work, so that the scientist, the guy that has the PhD from Stanford or whatever, that is building the cutting edge algorithm, can do his job. So, which means that you as an MLE, you're not really touching ML that much, but you're supporting the scientist touching that model.
It's an exclusive information that machine learning engineers does not really do machine learning precisely.
It all depends on which company you're in and what team you're in. But in general, in general at Amazon, but I have, recruiters from other companies, reaching out to me, and it's pretty much the same stuff, There are two class of people working on these. You're going to have the machine learning scientists. Those are going to be the people with PhDs from Stanford's and Berkeley's, that spent years and years doing research and writing publications on a very specific machine learning method, right? These are the people who are developing the intelligence of the algorithm. And then, so that's the first class of people, the scientists. And then the second class of people is the engineers that are making sure that whatever these scientists cook up, it works on a production level scale. Yes, as an MLE, you need to understand how these machine learning methods work, because you're going to be building software that is going to be supporting it. And yes, every now and then you might have an opportunity to improve something even in the model, but in general, it's not going to be your job to create a model, right? Like, there's going to be already a scientist working on the model. Your job is going to be making sure that that model then works when deployed to production. And when something breaks, you're going to be the one getting paged at 1 a.m., not the scientist, So I hope it makes clear on like what the distinction is between machine learning engineer and machine learning scientist.
Absolutely. So, there would be definitely a lot of challenges in between. So, have you faced any challenges, or in general, what are the potential challenges that a machine learning engineer might face?
The challenge that I think this is in general for like ML based projects. The challenge is 90% of the time like data, right? Like you define a learning task, or you're trying to, you have some sort of a problem which you feel should be solvable by machine learning. You have some sample data, you look at some samples of data provided to you by some business people or whatever, they're like, hey, can you look at this data and write an algorithm which solves the problem, right? And they give you some sample data, and you look at it, and based on like looking at a couple of CSV files, you think, oh, okay, like this model might actually work. We can do it this way. And then actually, when you pull in the full data set, you realize that it's crap, and so then you have to spend a lot of time aligning with the different stakeholders. Hey, is this data set, this column in this data set, does it mean X or does it mean Y? Is they like, how should I interpret this data? If my model predicts this, Like, does it make sense in the context of the business? So it's like what I found as like building these intelligent systems is that the success of your project depends on how well the business understands what the model is doing. So you need to spend, so let's say like you thinking that you can just like lock yourself, put your headphones on and just like spend 8 hours a day coding your sexy model is utopian. Like, it's not going to work. Like, what and that will, in fact, what's going to end up happening if you want to create a successful project is that you're going to end up spending a lot of time speaking to a lot of people, making sure that all the parties are aligned on what this data means, what is the success metric of the model, and that the data is of the quality that is required for that model to succeed. And once you have the metric, and once you have the success metric, and once you have the data, and everyone is on board, then you can put the headphones on and you can start building your sexy model. But until you have that, it's very hard to build anything, and usually getting this alignment and getting this data take a lot of time, and a lot of like back and forth. Yeah, I think that's like the main challenge, that you have to postpone coding. You, the engineer, you want to jump at it and start coding as quickly as possible, but you're gonna have to wait a little bit.
I mean, I can actually relate to it, being a cloud infrastructure engineer, I have
I
to,
can imagine.
so I need to, get the architecture done first before, it's just like I can script on Terraform and just, provision resources, but I still have to, get the confirmation that this is what the business needs. In fact, I have
Right,
also
right, right,
worked
right.
on a machine learning project, that
All
was
right.
I mean, nothing related to ML, but it was an ML project doing some kind of models and stuff. I'm not sure what that is because, I haven't been exposed to the machine learning part. I was just, working on the infrastructure. So it's like, it was a good experience, to set up the infrastructure for that particular project. And it was basically about ML, but again, it was indeed interesting. And I can totally relate that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you need to make your customer happy, right? So
Yep.
like, it pays spending time with the customer,
Yeah.
even though that's maybe not what you as the engineer, as the geek, enjoy doing the most.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have to invest time in that
Yeah.
relationship for sure.
Okay, so this particular next question is going to be, kind of more important for anybody. So it's basically about the demand of the job.
All right.
How do we, find a machine learning engineer job? Is it commonly available, or is it, specific for, top tech companies like Amazon or Google? How is the, demand for the job? Does a lot of company require that, or is it a niche job that needs specific focus or skill sets?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely less common than a generic software engineer role, but there are definitely openings. Like any bigger tech company is gonna have, any big tech company is gonna have ML-based AI systems. Google, Amazon, Apple, they have ML pipelines there, and for those, software engineers working on those, supporting those pipelines and building new tools for scientists to do research on. These are technically machine learning engineers. All of these companies are going to have openings for that. On LinkedIn, I'm getting pinged quite often from big tech companies and even smaller companies asking specifically, hey, don't you want to go do machine learning engineering for us? So I think the demand is definitely there. They might call the roles differently across organizations. Some organizations might call them machine learning engineers. Some organizations might call them something like software engineer dash machine learning.
Oh,
Some organizations might call them AI engineer. It really depends. I guess the general role for, let's say, the general job description is, hey, a person who is supporting ML pipelines and, pushing models to production and building tools for ML scientists to experiment quickly and push models to production.
yeah.
That's generally what an ML engineer does. There is definitely a lot of work for these people in these big tech companies.
So, is it kind of like an experienced role or somebody, does it require prior experience or does entry level people can also apply for it?
I coming out of university, I wanted an ML job. I wasn't able to get it, but so I got in as a software engineer, and then I, let's say, clawed my way through the hierarchy. Amazon specifically, they even have like applied science internships, and they have like research science internships and software engineer internships in ML teams. So it is definitely possible for you to get an internship or even an entry-level job in a team that does ML, and then you basically become an ML engineer, right? That's definitely possible. Now, how likely are you to find that specific job? That I'm not entirely sure. It's probably much less common than just applying for a software engineering internship, but those roles do exist. So you just need to like look at them and look around,
Yeah. I also think, side projects might help, doing something on ML.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like I have observed, a lot of people doing machine learning projects in their final year of college. So it's like I think that might be, supportive if they do multiple, but
Right. Kaggle helps, if people watching this are into, are hoping to get an ML engineer job or ML scientist job at some big tech company. Kaggle is a nice little way of, you create a public GitHub repository where you're solving a Kaggle competition. That's a nice little way to showcase your skill that I've used in the past successfully. It works. It's a nice thing. You have a nice data point you can talk about in the interview. Kaggle is good for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I have noticed a few people, good with Kaggle, even while in their college days and, doing some ML.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a valid point. Cool. So, do you suggest anything like a roadmap to have a machine learning career, for people who want to transition into a machine learning career who are already working, and how will the journey be for a student?
So I think like if you're someone who's maybe at university right now, thinking, oh, I really love machine learning and I want to do machine learning, right? And let's say you're toward the end of your bachelor degree, right? And now you're basically, you learned about machine learning and you think it's the best thing ever, right? And you want to dedicate your life to doing machine learning. So then the thing you need to ask yourself is, do I want to do like hardcore machine learning? Do I actually want to do like work on cutting edge models and, push the human understanding of how machine learning pushes artificial intelligence forward? If the answer to this question is yes, then probably you don't want to be based on what we just discussed, you probably don't want to be a machine learning engineer. You probably want to be a machine learning scientist.
Okay.
And hence, you probably want to go do a PhD or something like that, definitely like a master degree at the minimum, but probably you want to find a good professor at a good university and you want to go do a PhD with them, on a very specific machine learning topic. And then if that goes well, you publish some papers, then probably some big tech company would happily take you on. And then you will end up working on those sexy models and really like pushing it forward. Now, if the answer to that question is no, that you don't necessarily want to be that person that's, really going deep into the mathematical formulas of a model and designing new ways machine learning tasks are being tackled, right? If you're the person that actually likes to build stuff more and improve infrastructures for machine learning, and now that's a person, if the answer is this, right, then machine learning engineer role is probably for you. In that case, you probably don't need a PhD. a master degree will be helpful.
Right.
But I, for example, don't have a master degree, and I was able to get the job. So I guess for these people that don't want to be the hardcore scientists but want to work on like supporting machine learning, then I think the best way for you to the roadmap, to create your roadmap, is to polish your LinkedIn, polish your resume, start applying, and while you're applying, work on side projects. If you have the ability to work with a professor, that if you're so lucky that you have a professor that does something ML related in your school, try to get some work with him. If not, hackathons are awesome. Let's see if we can get some hackathon projects where you can maybe use a little bit of machine learning.
Yep.
If not that, Kaggle
Yeah.
is awesome. That's where you can showcase your skill. And there are a bunch of open source projects that you can contribute to as well. And big tech companies, they, anytime you can send someone your GitHub page and you have a bunch of open source commitments there, it looks good. It gives you nice little content you can talk about in your interview. So yeah, that would be, let's say, the process, right? Applying as much as possible, making sure your LinkedIn and resume are polished, and in the meanwhile, building your repository of ML projects,
Right.
via Kaggle, hackathons, extracurricular activities.
So, absolutely maths is the most important subject when it comes to ML. But, what are the other skills, that somebody needs in order to be a machine learning engineer? Because, cloud is fast growing and definitely you need a lot of exposure in the cloud services. There would be other skill sets outside of cloud that you also need to be a machine learning engineer. So what are those skill sets that you would suggest for people to, get a career in the machine learning domain?
That's a very good question. So I think so. You said math, and I think, and that's a very valid point. I'll
Yep.
go a little bit deeper than just math. I would say that for a person to like have if you want to be an ML engineer,
Mhm.
it helps if you know how ML works.
Okay.
If not to the, if not like super deep, at least on a certain level of
Yep.
granularity.
Yep.
And for that, I think it's absolutely crucial that you understand like linear algebra, some multivariate calculus, and statistics. These are like the three math disciplines that machine learning is built on top of. Once you know these, machine learning will make sense to you. And once it makes sense to you, you can play around with it. So that's on the math part. Now, you're absolutely right. There's more to it, right?
Yep.
Because you're an engineer, your job is to make stuff work. So just math alone will not cut it. I think what helped me personally a lot is coming from the software engineer background, i.e., having written a lot of code and
Mhm.
having thought about projects from the software engineer perspective.
Yep.
Is helpful a lot, because then that you have a lot of data scientists that are on Kaggle or whatever, or even in these big time companies, you have like data scientists that are like super stoked on math, but then they actually ask them to write some code, and they write this massive Jupyter notebook,
Okay.
and it's like, okay, it works, but how do I make it into a product? Right? It's like this massive like script that is not reusable, nothing. So that's not a proper way to code. So if you're also able to understand math and you know how to code, and I don't mean just like know how to code, but I mean like you understand principles of object-oriented programming, principles of design, object-oriented design patterns, and functional programming patterns, like the way that makes code reusable and manageable. If you can combine this with the math, that'll make you a much better machine learning engineer. Yeah, and absolutely, as you said, cloud is much more relevant as we go forward. Software is being deployed to cloud more than ever. If you're able to teach yourself some of the cloud platforms, you're making yourself much more attractive to future employers, because all of the future employers are going to be running stuff on the cloud, specifically their ML pipelines, they're going to be hosted in the cloud. So you're going to need to know that as well. I'm not sure if it's gonna help you in the interview that much, because from my experience, when like interviewing ML engineers,
Right.
the interviews tend to focus more on the coding and on the machine learning theory, more than on implementing a machine learning system in the cloud. So if you're just optimizing for the interview, then if you have limited time and you're optimizing for the interview, then I think like the math, the theory of machine learning, and like the coding will be the best way to spend your time. But like if you're just like optimizing for like a like a long-term successful ML engineer career, cloud computing is definitely a skill you want there. The soft skills, like being able to speak to a customer, explain your model to an end user. This is a super valuable skill that a lot of
really important.
technical people overlook, right? If you focus on that, on making sure that people understand what you're working for, what you're working on and how it solves their problem, you're already much better off than the rest. Also on like being able to present your work, being able to communicate with your customers about what you're solving, and these sort of softer skills that are, let's say, less measurable than how many lines of code you've written today, but they're very they definitely help your career in general, but in ML engineers as well.
Yeah, I mean, like soft skills are definitely more important. Communicating what we have done to the business is really a tough task, and we have to excel in that. Awesome. So do you have any kind of strategies or something to prepare for machine learning job interviews?
In general, from and different tech companies do it differently, but from what I've noticed is, and being on both, being the person interviewing others and being interviewed myself, when someone wants to fill an ML engineer role, we're looking for that the person understands ML, knows how to code, and satisfied the behavioral questions, right? So like is a fit, let's say. We already touched upon it a little bit before, but like if you have like an MLE interview upcoming in the next couple of days or weeks, I think your best guess as preparing for it would be approach it as like a software engineering interview at a FANG company, and read a little bit on ML theory as well. So be prepared to code, be prepared to get a question about coding and make sure you can write the code that will work. Just like any other software engineering interview. But also prepare your behavioral questions. When someone asks you, can you talk me about the time when blah blah blah, make sure you have the answer ready. And then finally, make sure that when someone asks you, hey, so what's the difference between linear regression and logistics regression, that you know the answer to that. When I was preparing for these like MLE interviews, what I did is that I read this book called the Deep Learning book by Ian Goodfellow, who is I think the most cited AI guy. But anyways, he wrote this nice, and it's a free book. It's in a browser. deeplearningbook.com, I think it is. Yeah, it's like 300 pages, and they go from like general machine learning to like very rigorous deep learning. There are some nice examples. Theory is explained there. What is learning? What is regularization? Blah, blah, blah. I use that book as a resource for the machine learning theory part of the interview. And then I use LeetCode and or the other, cracking the coding interview as a resource for the coding part of the interview. And yeah, if you follow this, I think you should be good to go.
So okay, do you have any kind of advice that you need to give for the aspiring people who want to transition their career into the machine learning?
Get a mentor, I think would be my number one advice. Yeah, try to find someone who already did whatever you're trying to do. And this is like a super generic advice that works for everything. But at the end of the day, whatever I'm telling you right now, it's sort of, it is helpful for sure, and you can pull out some specific data points and make some decisions based on it for sure. And I hope it helps some people. But having a sort of mentor that I can go to and be like, hey, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, and that person be like, oh, I've been exactly in this situation, you need to do this and this, that's so good, it's so valuable. So start pinging people on, hopefully you know someone
Yeah,
that can already help you with that. If you don't, start looking around on LinkedIn or friends of friends, or if you're an ML engineer, ping me, like you and me, how we connected,
yeah,
you pinged me and now we're here, right? Like in general, people on LinkedIn tend to be very helpful to people
absolutely,
that
absolutely.
are trying to achieve similar things.
Yeah,
So yeah, if you're an ML aspirant, find a mentor. If you don't know who your mentor could be, ping me on LinkedIn and let's talk. Happy to help.
yeah, absolutely. I was exploring software engineering by then, and we met, and it was a great experience to know more about software engineering. Literally, I didn't really have much idea before I met you, and after that it was totally different. So yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So getting a mentor is definitely a valid and an important point. Now we're coming to a close. So thank you very much, Thomas, for spending your time, sharing those knowledge
Absolutely.
and all those insights to the audience. I'm sure anybody who's listening to this is definitely going to find it very helpful. And thank you so much again. Before we close down, any closing notes?
Good luck and get the mentor. And it was a pleasure being here, Udesh. I had a lot of fun speaking with you tonight.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing to have you here. And thanks, guys, for listening. This is your Cloud Pilot signing out with another one. We will catch you soon. Until then, bye.